5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City. A fusion of politics, commentary, entertainment, and sports. Steve and his team bring you the latest news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
The suit is a stunt. But what I've told Speaker Boehner directly is, if you're really concerned about me taking too many executive actions, why don't you try getting something done through Congress? The majority of American people want to see immigration reform done. We had a bipartisan bill through the Senate, and you're going to squawk if I try to fix some parts of it administratively that are within my authority while you are not doing anything?
All right, folks, there's the president. We welcome in Kevin D. Williamson, and he is Deputy Managing Editor of National Review. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us. I got to tell you, this is probably the most important issue of our time. I mean, compared, all the things we're dealing with, every individual scandal, what's going on in Iraq, now what's going on in Israel, Syria, you name it, and scandal after scandal. But the lawsuit that John Boehner threatens to file doesn't involve recess appointments, doesn't talk about number of executive orders, which the left has tried to turn this into a numbers game between Clinton and Bush and Obama. This is about violation of the law. Now, I'm sure you know this, but just to tell the folks, the president again reiterated that he's going to act on immigration, and he said, quote, "So sue me." Now he's making a joke of it. Now he's mocking this, and I got to tell you, you wrote a great piece at the Eternal Dictator, and you document, some of the dictators in recent history. I love the Issimo Francisco Franco, which takes me back to Saturday Night Live and all those reports that General Issimo Francisco Franco is still dead. I know you're 41. I hope you're old enough to remember that. But this man, this president, our president, seems to be gaining more and more chutzpah, more and more gall, and he's going to continue with this.
Yeah, he's a little like the velociraptors in Jurassic Park, always just sort of testing the fence to see where they can push and where they can get through. And of course, as John Funn pointed out a couple of days ago, the Supreme Court has, since 2012, I guess, 13 times unanimously ruled against his administration on various actions of administrative and executive overreach. So the point, and
that is, Kevin, that is unbelievably huge. If the left wants to play with numbers, then let's play with numbers. How many times did Bush get ruled against 9-0 by the U.S. Supreme Court within a 2-year time span, a 1.5-year time span, or Clinton, or Reagan, or anybody? I mean, we're talking about 13 times in a year and a half.
Right. He is systematically trying to expand the power of the presidency because he's got a divided Congress. He can't do the things that he wants to do, and he's unwilling to accept that he won his election and the people in the House won their elections too, and we have co-equal branches of government. He just doesn't want to accept that. He thinks of himself as being more like a European prime minister, where he should be the head of a unified, unitary government that's going to put his policies into place rather than what he can get through Congress. So the point of the piece isn't to compare him, obviously, to Salazar, or the colonels in Greece, or Franco, or Pinochet, or anyone like that, but to demonstrate that what we have in the United States, which is a very unusual, long-lasting, small R Republican form of government under democratic institutions, is very fragile, and it's abnormal from the long point of view of human history. As I was pointing out, I'm only 41 years old, and in my lifetime, all sorts of countries that we think of as being advanced and civilized nations, Spain, Portugal, Greece, India,
they've all had dictators, yeah.
Dictatorships. Dictatorship isn't something that gets imposed on countries. It's the normal state of affairs. What has to be nurtured and maintained is liberty, which is not a natural state.
By the way, and you talk about Woodrow Wilson and FDR in this country, and I think that's such an important history lesson that really every American should learn. I mean, FDR certainly with his with his extended presidency, and Woodrow Wilson, who locked up people and tore apart the freedom of the press, and you know, the bills that were passed, and Sedition Act and all that. I mean, it was a scary presidency when you look back on that, and Americans don't even blink an eye. They don't have a clue, and he was really a progressive. And so we have to learn really from history what progressives are.
Sure, the thing that Wilson and Roosevelt have in common isn't just their politics, but what they really have in common is war. And war is always an invitation to aggrandizement of executive power. It happened in the Roman Republic, it happened in our republic. Wilson in peacetime, or Roosevelt in peacetime, would have been problematic, but they wouldn't have been the sort of figures that they became. Now, Wilson was a much worse case than Roosevelt. Roosevelt had some bad ideas, obviously, and he enacted some programs with which I disagree, but Wilson really attempted to centralize power in Washington and the White House in roughly the same fashion that Mussolini was looking at doing in Italy, down to dispatching, you know, his goon squads to go rough up anti-war protesters and that sort of thing. So the lucky thing for us was that what was called war socialism, which was Wilson's program of sort of regimenting the economy and politics during the war, a lot of his acolytes wanted to keep that after the war was over. And fortunately, we had a number of good and sensible patriotic people, both in his administration and outside of it after the war, who ensured that that didn't happen. But as Robert Higgs always argues in Crisis and Leviathan, every time something goes wrong, every time there's some crisis, the state always expands a little bit, and then it never quite goes back all the way to the levels that it was before. We've seen this with the war on terror. There's very same people who were abominating George W. Bush and Dick Cheney for things like the Patriot Act are now celebrating the fact that the American government is conducting assassinations of American citizens overseas with no sort of legal warrant for doing so. The little bit of snooping that was happening under the Patriot Act is now universal snooping under the NSA. And the very people who were, you know, coming out of their pants with fear and rage about that when it was George W. Bush are now the ones enacting these policies, the ones pressing for them, and in the press and in the political commentator class celebrating them. So the chances of us ever going back to where we were before this, I think, are really very slim. So it's kind of a ratchet effect, and it's something that we always, as free people, have to be on the watch for and always have to be fighting against.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just to get a plug in for Jonah Goldberg with liberal fascism, I mean, he goes in depth into everything we're talking about, especially with regard specifically to Wilson and FDR and Mussolini and the whole thing. But let me ask you, where do you think this ends? I mean, does John Boehner miraculously fast track his lawsuit and reins in Barack Obama, or does this suit go nowhere? And even if it does, Obama's long gone, and Obama's going to keep getting away with everything he tries, pushing the envelope until and unless Boehner exercises his congressional authority and they tighten the purse strings, cut off funding, or use other options that are available to them.
Yeah, well, what I always, you know, support in these sorts of circumstances is fighting on all possible fronts. So the lawsuit's not really going to go anywhere, and it's not going to do anything, but certainly they can do things with appropriations. Certainly they can do things with other congressional actions. I mean, the people who talk about impeachment are kidding themselves. We're nowhere close to politically being able to get that done, and it probably would be a pretty bad idea if we were even to try. But there are things that Congress can do, but ultimately it's not what John Boehner does, it's what the American people do. And the American people had a chance to weigh in on this in 2012, and they voted for 4 more years of it, so they're getting what they asked for.
That is the scary part. And now, of course, that women have lost all health care. Maybe you haven't heard, but about 24 hours ago, women have no more health care in this country, and they're forbidden to have any more health care because of the Supreme Court. They're trying to make that out of that. Let's talk about Hillary for a second. We played a soundbite, a video of her, you know, I'll just say kvetching about the fact that we're now turning into a country that's repressive against women, and that's what she fought against so hard as Secretary of State. Really a huge exaggeration. But, you know, I got a story here from Business Insider that Bill and Hillary made $160 million, Kevin, after leaving the White House. Not really rich and flat broke? I don't think so.
Yeah, I wish I were that kind of flat broke. You know, their vacation house in the Hamptons, not too far from here. It's just a rental, of course. They don't own it, but it's $200,000 a month. This in a country in which the median household income for a year is about $50,000. So
Well, all they got, wait, all one of them has to do is make one speech, and they got that covered.
right, Chelsea, just starting off in life in her new marriage, lives not too far from where I'm looking out my window here. In fact, over on Gramercy Park, in a $10.5 million apartment. And then she gives this interview about, well, I tried to see if I could care about money, but I just couldn't make myself do it. Well, of course she doesn't care about money. It's something she's never had to think about in her life because she's always been extraordinarily wealthy. You take it away from her, she'll be a fish out of water and she'll have to flop her way back into it. People like that, Hillary giving her talk about, well, the truly well-off are different from us, and Bill Clinton talking about inequality and all the rest of it. It's unseemly and it's in bad taste. Now, the big criticism of Bill Clinton when he was first running for president among these sort of patrician country club Republican types was that he was this grifting hillbilly from Arkansas who had no class and no sense of what it was like to be a figure of national importance. And the thing about it is, even though that was a snobby and nasty line of criticism, he keeps proving them right. And now that he's a guy with $100-odd million in the bank, an ex-president, and has done everything in life one could hope to do, he is still this embarrassing, vulgar, oleaginous figure who is just a national embarrassment who will not go away. And I wish these people would be drummed out of public life, but until the American public decides that it's going to recover its sense of self-respect and remember what we fought a revolution about, then we're going to keep enduring these people who are essentially the political version of the Kardashians.
Time will tell, Kevin, and I thank you so much for joining us today. That's Kevin Williamson, and of course he is Deputy Managing Editor of National Review. Thank you, Kevin. When we come back, we're going to be joined by America's toughest sheriff, the one and only Joe Arpaio, and he will be here to talk about the immigration problem, what could be done about it, what else on the Steve Malzberg